I'm Chris Barker.
And I'm Will Betts, and this is the MusicTech My Forever Studio podcast, brought to you in partnership with Audient. And we're coming to you this time from TYX Studios in London.
In this podcast, we speak with producers, engineers, DJs and musicians about their fantasy forever studio.
The fantasy studio that our guests dream up today is one that they must live with for all time. But even in fantasy foreverland, we do have a few rules.
That's right, the rules. Our guests will select a computer, a DAW and an audio interface. Those are free items that every guest gets. Then they get just 6 other bits of audio gear and 1 luxury item.
However, there's one more rule, isn't there, Chris?
Oh yeah!
No bundles!
That's right, no bundles. Any package of software or hardware chosen as a single item is not allowed.
On the show this time, we have a DJ, producer, synth hoarder, and a serial music tech entrepreneur.
That's right, from producing club smashes to founding companies like Sample Magic, Principal Pleasure Studios, and now Wavetick, he's an industry heavyweight.
But will designing studios in real life be a help or a hindrance when he's confronted with our Forever Studio rules?
Exactly. It's going to be a challenge. Let's welcome to the My Forever Studio, Sharooz Raufi. Hello.
Welcome. Hello, thank you for having me.
No worries, thank you for coming. So, yes, a lot of fingers, lots of pies.
I don't have enough fingers. 4 hands.
Okay. Well, you heard the rules there, and we'll get to the designing of the studio a little bit. But let's go back and talk about this sort of early stages. I mean, I first met you probably around Get Off, right? Like probably, what's that, 2008, 2007?
Yeah, 2007, 2008. I can't even remember the year. Yeah, 08 it would have been.
Something like that. I remember, and that was Sharooz in full producer DJ flight mode. I think you maybe founded Sample Magic then as well, had you?
Yeah, 2006. That was a couple of years before that. Yeah, so that was really when.
So the entrepreneurial side was always there.
Yeah, the accidental entrepreneur, as I often refer to myself as, because it all just sort of, it was like, how do I can't supplement my income and my studio rent by just doing one thing. So hey, let's try 10 things and see what sticks. And
I guess that was the era though where it was challenging, because to sell records in dance music as such, it just was, that wave had sort of died down.
Yes,
in like that sort of 2008 era, that was.
And weirdly, it was a lot easier and better in a lot of ways than it is now, because, we had things like compilation CDs, which, were always a great white light of hope. And we had, real licenses. We had real sync stuff going on. And you could have a track that was in, say, like the Beatport Top 20, and suddenly all this crazy interest with real remixes and real remix budgets would come in. So in a lot of ways it was better, but it still was lousy insofar as being able to, I think DJ gigs were definitely the one part of it that, kept us all going.
Kept everybody going,
those days, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the Beatport thing was still, I mean, it's vibrant now, but because it wasn't streaming based or only streaming based, it was all sales.
It was a big deal.
Yeah. It made a difference. Like having a top 10 record on Beatport then would be more financially viable than it is now, I guess.
I think it was just all the things that came with it. It had, I mean, it's obviously still quite a prestigious thing now. It's certainly no different in a lot of ways, but it just, your whole world could explode from being in the top 10, really. And the sort of interest you would get from other labels that would pay advances from record labels. For
doesn't exist in much
tracks, for one-off dance tracks with no option would, that was what we all used to do. And that's what we all used to do. It sounds like it was 20 years ago, but I suppose it was about 15 years ago. But that was how it was. And I mean, that was all incredible. But it's still, I think with Sample Magic, the main reason we kind of did it was because I had so many bits of tracks that would never really, I'd never really released them. And I've told this story a few times before, and I ended up with just hard disks full of just loops and sounds and things that I just, every day I'd be in the studio jamming and making stuff. And it was like, hey, we've got to do something with all of this. And we made DVDs. That's how sounds packs used to be done. And that was...
You changed the game in terms of the presentation, didn't you? Because you sort of, they were DVDs and they looked like beautiful products, like something you want to have on your shelf.
That was it. I mean, that was the other amazing thing about that era. You could, collectible things you could charge we were selling our DVDs for 50, 60 quid. I mean, that was pretty incredible. And but yeah, they did. We really went into. I mean, I remember we'd go over to the folks that were printing the booklets and the physical discs, and there was a whole process around that, and that was definitely something I really miss now, because it was there were folks that wouldn't even be that concerned with what was on the disc. They'd see the packaging and be like, whoa, there's a new Sample Magic release out. We've got to go and get this because it looks awesome. And we just, people would email us and they'd have a bunch of them on the shelf of their studio, on their feature shelf. I'm like, whoa, we've got all of them. Yeah, I've got all 20 releases. And, there's one guy who had like, I think 30 DVDs. I didn't even have them all. And it was like, just awesome. Like this, they became and we never repress any of them. I think that was we just kept moving forward with new editions. So we'd never really go back and repress any. So they became really limited edition.
Have you explored eBay to see if there's a...
There used to be. There used to be, there used to be people that were selling them for crazy amounts of money. And,
especially if they're not repressed, there'll be ones,
Yeah, there was, I mean, of course you could get the whole, there are multiple ways to get them all in archives and,
all the content still exists in new services.
But being able to actually get the booklets and stuff, I don't even have them. So, yeah.
And was Get Off kind of the big maneuver, sort of music-wise, that kind of changed things? I mean, or were there moments before that kind of... Because you still had, when I first met you then, you still had a really nice little studio, small room, but, you were still doing beyond it being a bedroom sort of situation. So what was that change, really?
It's really weird. So I mean, I've never actually told a story, but it's a bit of an embarrassing story, really. I don't think anyone really ever wants to admit to this, but when I left college, I moved down to London. I was living in Derby, which is in the Midlands, and it's a small town, which, once I'd left college, wasn't really any reason for me to be there. So I had this mate, and he was like, we make production music, and actually it's a really cool way to just make a bunch of tracks and get paid for it. And I was like, well, it sounds good. I wasn't getting a break anywhere. I'd done a few remixes. I was working at Warner Brothers Records at the time, and I was getting paid a crazy low salary, and you would do it for the experience, so they would say. So you basically just come in and get paid like 10 grand a year or whatever. And I was struggling to just be able to do anything. So I started doing this production music, and I did it for a couple of years, and I was about to basically just leave London and go and essentially move back to my mother's house in Belfast, because I just wasn't able to sustain myself. And I think I just packed everything up. I think it was like 2002, 2003. And my mum said a check had arrived for me at home, because they were saying the MCPS used to mail out checks, and I think PRS even used to send checks. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. And she's like, I said, you should open it. Could you open it for me? Because I need to see if I can pay my rent. And she's like, yeah. And she got really excited. She's like, it's a check for £2,800. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. I'll be able to pay my rent for the next 6 months. I was paying 500 quid a month for rent or whatever. And then I said, well, mail it over. And she mailed it over. I said, make sure it's special delivery. And I was ready to, I'd given my notice in my apartment, and I got the check. And this weird thing that EMI and the library was with EMI and MCPS used to write their checks in a way where they used to do them by, like in this really old school fashion where you had like tens, thousands, and they used to list out all the units. So my mum had got it wrong, and the check was actually for £28,000. And this is 20 years ago. So, that's like 60 grand, 70 grand by today's money. And it was pretty much all from a Japanese TV show that had played one of the songs from this production music album in constant rotation for about a year. Obviously, YouTube wasn't really a thing, so there was no way of me finding out what it was. But that 28 grand, that was just the start. They pay you twice a year. So 6 months later, I got a similar size check. And it was insane. It was just like, I'd literally gone from doing absolutely nothing to this library music I'd done, which I'd really just done because I had no other means to do anything. I think they gave me 500 quid for making the album. Suddenly became this crazy income, and it went on for about, and then there was a PRS income. So that was like 5 years of just getting these crazy checks from, and it wasn't just that Japanese TV show, in fairness. It became, there was one particular album, and you had no say where it was synced. I mean, it would be things like tabloid newspapers serializing somebody's book and doing TV commercials during prime time, X Factor, ITV, TV programming, and of course the PRS was weighted in such a way that the time at which it was played was worth
Amazing.
10x if it was terrestrial TV than if it was.
Great lesson in saying yes to something when somebody offers you a
and I was very close to saying no, because like who would want to do that? The only reason I said yes was because I had nothing, and the 500 quid they were paying me for the entire album was like, hey, I'll pay my rent for the month. So that's how it all started. And I've never told that story because it's the least exotic way anyone could ever get.
No, but it's a great lesson that these are how these things start, and and if you've got to give things a go, and so that made you continue the library music as well. Do you think, well, I've got to keep doing more of this? I did
a lot more of it after that happened. Actually, I think there was about a year, 2004, when that's all I did. Because
was that success? Not just was financially, but were you then known? Did it matter that you'd known and you'd had hits, or it was just chaos in terms of what sticks and what doesn't?
It was just chaos. I couldn't recreate that same formula. Nobody within the major publishers. I mean, at one point I was working with EMI, BMG, Zomba, as they were back then, Sony ATV, and I think there must have been another major publisher in there, at least 3 major publishers. I was working for all of them because I didn't have an exclusive deal. Nobody really knew who I was within any of those departments. It literally just was sending my demos out. And it was quite a good time to be doing it because there weren't that many, library music, production music was just like old dudes. I remember one of the main guys was like literally cutting tape for production music and getting like, BBC sort of style, like horn sections and match of the day type stuff, and it was like that was where it was just like old men with like triangle sandwiches. And then I came in, I was doing everything in a DAW, which in 2001 2002 was like there weren't that many people who were doing it that way. And of course everything was louder, it was clearer, it was punchier, and that's exactly what TV wanted. So my demos got listened to, they really stood out. And as a result, I just ended up working with just about every major publisher. There was one year I did about 150 tracks, I think. But none of them ever came close to the success of that first one. But still, even by today's standards, it was really good. And then I just got burnt out. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, it was Muzak, most of it. And I don't regret it. Of course I don't. I mean, if you don't have any money and you're skint, my attitude and advice has always been just say yes to it. If you don't like how it ends up, the problem with production music, of course, is you have no say in who uses it and where it's used. And there's a few, Fox News, the Daily Mail, all those, I looked at the PRS, and even now, it's still a lot of those folks that
But you're not necessarily, your name's not all over it.
So. No, I've got loads of aliases. Yeah. I made the mistake of that first album putting it under my name. So even to this day, if you go on YouTube and you Google my name, you'll probably find some of those tracks in there. I don't care. It's, but it's, yeah, it is what it is. And I don't know if that world is the same anymore or if it'll ever be the same, but it certainly, that was an era, and it was just, everybody has some weird, embarrassing niche. The deeper you dig into anyone's history that's been around for a long time, it's like a boil. They have a niche that they never want to discuss. But for me, I'm just totally, this is the first time I've spoken about it, but and it's funny, every time someone does a feature on my studio, they're always like, oh, this dude, like the state of him, he's got all these synths, like, oh, this is just someone just splurging money on stuff, like, where the hell's he got all the money from? I'm like, dude, 20 years ago is where I bought most of that stuff. The 909,
and that was an era where that stuff was a lot cheaper as well.
Honestly, I got the 909 for 300 quid. Yeah. I got the 303 for 250 quid. I got my 808, I think, for about 800 quid, which I was crazy mad at paying that much for it. And that's where it all came from. The Jupiter 8 was $1,000. Yeah. That's where it all came from.
That first track, though, the one that blew up on the Japanese TV show.
Yeah.
What kind of music was that?
It was, during that era, I was actually playing this, I was DJing a lot of bars in London, like just crappy sort of cocktail bars, the sort of places that just didn't really have much imagination. And I had a couple of tracks that were, I think it was like Head Candy or one of those labels. So it was like this sort of, I call it cocktail house music. It was like Latin, which is a horrible name for it, Latin house, like sort of salsa, samba,
like basically house meets Latin house.
Yeah, basically white people trying to do like Brazilian. And actually I was dating a Brazilian girl at the time, so that did help. I got some bossa nova guitarists in, and that it definitely helped having that slice of authenticity to it. But that's basically what it was. It was like Latin house. Again, horrible term, but yeah,
huge at the time. That
great for jingles.
That Head Candy era, though, wasn't it? Like 2000s to sort of 2010, maybe.
That was precisely the sound of it was the
Junior Jack and that kind of.
It was exactly that era. Defected was sort of in its infancy.
And then we move on to the modern day. So studio-wise, right now, you still got the place in LA?
Yeah, I still have it. Principal Pleasure.
So that's the synth cave, really, isn't it?
It's a glorified man cave. So full disclosure, and I just had a bunch of folks in there shooting. I'm actually living there at the minute.
Amongst the synths?
I literally live amongst the synths, and this I'm not homeless. I haven't been kicked out of my house. I'm not a hobo. The reason I'm living there is because I haven't really had a chance to be there much. I've got a young daughter, and she was born here in London, and so I've got a place here, and this is where I live for a large part of the year. So I had the studio, and then I was renting a house out there, and obviously not being able to be there half the year, I was like, what am I doing? Like, it's just crazy to be sort of spending all this money. So I moved into the studio, safe in the knowledge that my family wouldn't really be coming out there much with me. So it's an absolute dream. I've basically got a man cave, and I've partitioned it out quite nicely, but I live in my studio, and it is absolutely, I can't see
any other situation. This would be a sad story about a man living in his man cave.
It is a bit sad.
In this situation, all of us are like, that sounds like the dream.
I get up, brush my teeth, and make beats. And, sometimes I'm just there with my boxer shorts on. It's brilliant. I'm going to have to move out pretty soon. Like, it's only a short-term measure. It's only been the last sort of...
But it doesn't enable you to have loads of time there, I guess. When you're there,
I've got no excuse.
There's no I need to get to the studio, especially in LA. Like,
there's no commute. It's brilliant, and it is. The way the building is designed. It's a combination really of. It's got this live-work zoning. The city have made it so that you have to have. I think a third of the things, the fit out has to basically be designed for living in. Otherwise, they won't issue you a business license. But they are business units. So a lot of folks do live in them anyway. And they do these open houses where like a lot of artists who do sort of, physical art open out their studios, and people come in, and you're literally in someone's kitchen that also happens to have a bunch of paintings and sculpture going on. So yeah, it's not unusual.
Sounds cool. It's kind of like campus kind of vibes. A bit like TOX kind of style.
I mean, you don't. It's becoming harder and harder to have real artists down there. Like, I've been there about 10 years now, and a lot of folks have moved out. And it's, Skrillex used to be in the building. Sonny, Boys Noise. We had a bunch of guys from Ausla who had an entire floor. It was a brilliant setup, and they were all living in there at the time. I don't know how it is now. It's definitely become the balance is not as much working. But yeah, it's not unusual for that to be the case down there.
And it's a hell of a load of synths you've got in there. I mean, people should check out the MusicTech article on it with all the pictures of your studio, because there's dozens and dozens of incredible bits of gear, right?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a 25-year collection, really. I mean, it's the stuff I'd had since I was a teenager. I mean, I was 15 years old when I bought my SH-101. That very 101's in that room. But there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I brought some of it back to the UK with me. There's doubles of many things. I've got 2 808s in there. I've got 2 Lindrums, LM2s, which is, there's all sorts of stories around how that happened. But it's a pretty awesome space, and it hasn't come together in 6 months to a year. And it's different. I mean, I was using it as a commercial facility, and it still is a commercial facility. And I've actually had a few quite big DJs now that it's sort of fitted out to live in. Some of my contemporaries, some execs from companies, they use it kind of as a hotel room that they can work in. Yeah. And that's become, I mean, I'm a little loath to sort of charge people for it, but if it's someone I don't know and they want to be in there for a week, really big A-list DJ in there for a week, just living out of, doing meetings and also working out of it. And
it's a great place to get inspired, isn't it? If you produce in the box, you just go in there and make all your own loops and samples.
Yeah, and it's really well located. Yeah. Like, it's within 20 minutes of anywhere. You can walk to a lot of the clubs. It's in the Arts District, so it's which, if you're not familiar with Los Angeles, it's kind of east of downtown. It's near this big bridge, the 4th and the 6th Street Bridge, which give these vantage points over all of downtown Los Angeles. It's really iconic, and yeah, it's a great location, not just because of what you can sea there, but also you can walk around it and get to. There's a Soho warehouse, which I don't know about that, but it's and Spotify again, don't know about that, and Warner Brothers. They're all within walking distance. So there's been a lot of interest. Almost every week, I get at least half a dozen requests.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it sort of leads us on to. Great locations. If you're building the Forever Studio, it's our first question of the My Forever Studio podcast. Where would you put your dream studio in the world? Would it still be here? Would it be in the UK? Would it be somewhere else?
It's a great question, and the boring answer would be I'd leave it where it is because it really is the ideal setup. But I'm not content with that. I think it's the one thing that's missing is nature, and what every creator will tell you is that they need some tranquility, and it's not a peaceful place down there. There's like helicopters doing urban warfare drills. There's like you're in downtown Los Angeles, you're a stone's throw from Skid Row, so you unfortunately all the social problems that come with that. So I'm going to pick the UK because for me it's a distraction free place. The weather's so shit that you want to be indoors. That's the first thing. LA is a very distracting place. Downtown Los Angeles, like I say, you walk. There's a lot of people that have fuck all to do with their time. So when you're there, it's just like, hey, I'm going to come and hang out. And because it's so vast, someone comes to hang out and you can't really get rid of them. They're there for the whole day. It happens to me all the time. And, I love that people come visit me. It's great. But that's why it's a distracting place, and that's why it's not a forever location.
Time is in much larger blocks, I guess. Yeah. And because it takes so long to get somewhere. Once you're there, you're there.
Yes, exactly that. It's exactly that. And I think the UK is such at this stage of my life, I love the idea of being in a rural location in the UK, perhaps Ireland, and it needs to be a place where there's really not much happening because that's where you're in your zone. I've got friends who've moved to some of the islands in Scotland, and they're Scottish. They're not sort of tourists that have just decided they like the look of Scotland. It's in their DNA. I grew up in Belfast, so I think somewhere in Northern Ireland would be amazing because for the most part of the year, the weather's so shit that you want to be indoors, but you're also going to get amazing views, clean air, great food, all that sort of stuff. And it sounds like a bit like a tourist commercial here. But Ireland, Northern Ireland, and it's relatively cheap, certainly a lot cheaper to fit out a decent space.
You don't have to worry about that in the Fantasy Forever studio, though.
Oh, yes, of course you don't. So I'm being so practical.
Less practical.
I'm trying really hard not to diss any regions or any countries here, but Ireland. I'm going to pick Ireland.
It's quite a popular choice, though, not to live in big cities and in the Fantasy Forever studio, but also when I've interviewed people in the past, there are similar stories of people moving to Berlin for the scene and then not getting any work done, just being out, great food, great people, great nightclubs, and it's just like a huge distraction.
Honestly, that's the biggest issue I have with my current space. There's too much else to do to focus yourself on music, and there's plenty to do in Ireland. I'm just not really that interested in it. I don't really like going on 4-hour country walks and in the pissing rain, so I'll set up a studio there, and that's not to diss anyone. I've got to be careful what I say here because my girlfriend's going to be watching and she loves that, but I don't, so I'll have my studio there, thank you very much. And
it's why these remote studios are still so popular. They're like Grouse Lodge and even Real World to a degree, and these that's residential spaces.
Devon Analog.
To go back to the weather, if it's too hot, I don't want to be indoors. And people, I need a studio with a view, with the sun shining in by the sea. Nah, man, I'd want to be in that sea, in that sun. In Ireland, at least I know that 95% of the time it's going to be cloudy and miserable. So I'm all right staying indoors, getting my work done, as long as I've got plenty of natural light and I can sort of see.
So what's this place look like? Are we talking...
I think
Craggy Island style cottage.
No. Yeah, I mean, as nice as that would be, I prefer to live there. But I think workspace, it would be nice to. I mean, I like Devon Analog because of how it's built and it's modern and it's prefabricated, but it's done in this really nice sort of architectural way. And I think that would have to be it. I think they've got it right. The location.
We can steal the Devon Analog studio and drop it in Ireland for you to fill up.
That would be fun. I mean, that would be a really. I think. I mean, no, I'm not sure if anyone would actually come out that far because it's amazing how a short Ryanair flight makes people, particularly Northern Ireland. I think Southern Ireland, there's the allure of Dublin and all of that, and everyone has some connection to Southern Ireland. But Northern Ireland is not really a place people go to unless they have to. So I'm not sure anyone would come there, but that could be also work in my favour. The fact that nobody wants to be there, I'd get
People
more stuff
come
done.
visit you, Sharooz, don't worry.
I'd like to think so.
That'd
I
be
mean,
sad.
and this is
Welcome.
actually, it's
Welcome.
well, this is actually a realistic thing. I'm doing this as if I'm actually planning it, and I am, and it's amazing how much further you will get budget-wise if you try to do this in Northern Ireland. It's one of the cheapest parts of the UK for now, at least, to do something like this. So
Yeah,
Where
Scotland
exactly?
as well.
Similar in Scotland, yeah. But where exactly in Northern Ireland would you put it? Because you've got to pin you down on a specific location.
Well, I think anywhere. I mean, the good thing about Belfast, where I grew up, is within 15, 20 minutes of it, if you drive in any direction, you're in fucking nowhere. It's sheep and basically like old dismantled police stations. That's basically and grass, and that's all there is. Potatoes. That's basically not a stereotype, but that is literally it. It's like fields with potatoes, grass, and sheep. And
got it.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, we don't really have a sort of gastropub culture and nice cozy country pubs that you get in. Like England, the Irish countryside, at least in Northern Ireland, it's not really been, like say, no one goes there, so it's not really been gentrified in that way, and it doesn't really have the same. There's not as much money as there is in places like the Cotswolds and Oxfordshire and sort of, even Somerset and Devon. So there's nothing. And that's it. That's within 20 minutes of Belfast, let's say, without...
So no particular village or location.
Well, I grew up, my first ever memories were Portrush and the, I'll be careful what I say here because I can't remember the exact name of the region. How can I not remember it? But North Down, is Portrush even in North Down? Shoot me for not knowing this, but I'd say anywhere within Portrush and Portstewart, which is getting very specific now, but that's only about an hour from Belfast, and that's where the coastline and nice beaches are. So
there you go.
Let's do that.
Portrush.
So when it is nice for those moments in the summer, you do have a little bit of the downtime, beachy vibes.
Yeah, and old school for me, like old school beach towns with like fish and chips and bingo and penny falls and all that. That's still there in Northern Ireland. It's never gone away. And there's no gentrification element to it. It's just exactly as it was in the 1970s and the early 80s when I remember it as a boy. So yeah, let's pick Portrush. Yeah.
Nice.
Locked in.
Yeah.
Done.
Okay.
So, the freebies then. We've got 3 items that you need to pick: the computer, interface, and DAW.
Yeah. Well, the
Quick
computer's
fire.
okay. So the computer's a boring one. It's going to be the M3, and the answer for that's simple. It's the only computer that I'm aware of that has no real limits. It's impossible to, unless you are. Yeah, it's just impossible to fuck it up. It's just there. The fan's never going off. I mean, I bought this huge top of the range, sort of 16 core Intel thing just before the native silicon computers were announced, and I had to. I don't know why it didn't work out for me, but the M3 is just the one, because you're never gonna. Someone like me who makes relatively straightforward electronic music, I'm never gonna hit the limits of what it's capable of. So that's
and that's the studio, is it?
No, the laptop.
The laptop.
Yeah, just
okay.
any of the M3 laptop. I mean, I've got an M3. I think it might even I think it's an M3 Pro. I've literally just bought it, and
just one of those spec'd out to max.
I don't even think it has to be at spec'd out.
Well,
minimum amount of RAM.
We're going to try and upsell some dreams here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you can have the RAM in there. If you can have the RAM in there, yeah, why not? But I've got, I think, 18 gigs of RAM and hard disk space, a terabyte. Oh, it's all on a removable drive now anyway, because I've got so many bits and pieces of libraries and obscure software, a lot of it, sadly, which doesn't work in native silicon supported.
How productive are you now compared to back in the day in terms of making the amount of music that you make when you've got all these other things going on?
I've got quite a Luddite attitude to this, and I never set up a new computer from an iCloud backup. I basically, when I get a new machine, I draw a line under everything I was doing in the past. And the reason I do this is because it when it comes to sort of plugins and registration and sort of stuff like that, it's honestly, might get pilloried for saying this by anyone I know at Apple, but it's much easier to just set up from scratch and re-register everything than it is to do a backup, because it's amazing how much goes wrong. And that's not Apple's fault. It's not even developers' fault. A lot of the stuff I enjoy, I like working with, these are devs that have sort of 3 or 4 folks working for them, and you can't expect that they're able to keep up with re-registering multiple machines with the latest OS and the latest CPU architecture. So set up from scratch. And the beauty of that is it forces you to work in a completely different way. Each time you set up a new machine, you're basically saying, well, that's my past. If I need it, I'll keep that computer. If I need to go back to it, I store my old machines. It's really nerdy. I make sure I look up all the storage guidelines. I keep the battery on half charge because I never know when I'm going to need those old projects again. But I don't update regularly. And when I get a new machine, it's a really good opportunity to update everything. And it's brilliant. You suddenly find yourself in line with everybody else that seems to have all these tools that you've never really dived into.
I've weirdly found that, but not in a good way initially, where you have a machine failure and obviously you're devastated, but then the starting from scratch with everything, like your record box and all your plugins and the DAW and everything, especially with record box for DJing, it's awful doing it all again. But then you find tracks that you'd forgotten about. You digging in, setting it all up, getting rid of loads of stuff that you never play.
There's only 2 things that come with me: my MP3s, and which is how archaic is that? I've got a hard disk full of MP3s, 4 record box, and my sample library, because that's 25 years, goes back to sort of 0G days, and you just never know what you're going to need. Some software.
How big's that?
Oh man, that's like.
How big is it?
That's
how big's your sample library, mate? That's a flex, isn't it?
It's a weird one.
It's several terabytes.
Oof.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, several terabytes.
It's a lot of one shots.
Yeah.
All one shots. I mean, it's amazing how bad the quality of some of those like 16-bit 44.1 drum hits recorded in someone's basement, but they're still there, and I know they're there. And I think that's the one bit of consistency you need when you're upgrading your machine, and your whole sort of architecture and your software setup just goes out the window. But
we're in that era of vintage samples as well now, where people hunt out because they have era and a sound.
There's a jungle one. It's sort of called like the best of jungle 89 to 99 or something. I forget who gave it away. It was some drum bass producer, and that's come with me since 98. That's literally there's
a lot of those early sample packs which are quite
so
dodgy on the copyright front as well.
Vince Clarke, lucky bastard. I've still got that. That's awesome. And it all comes with me.
A lot of the drum and bass and jungle libraries. Those drum breaks.
Dicey.
Dicey indeed.
So the interface then?
And this is, so I've got a Prism Morpheus, and this thing's like, man, how old's that? Like 15 years old. I know I've got Lyra as well, but I just don't use it, and I don't know why. It's because, well, first of all, and I'm sure the Orpheus has been superseded, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, an 8 in, 8 out, or as many ins and outs as I can get Prism. I love the sound of Prism. They are incredible. And they have this really nice preamp. Some folks have likened it to a 1073 on the mic pre's. It's pretty crazy. Like there's threads on the mic pre's, in my opinion, are insanely good. So I'm somehow like
not something that's come up before as well.
No, it's not.
There's threads on it. Amazing pre's, really nice DI in pre's, and 8 in 8 out, obviously helpful. I know there's ways. I've got a Lynx Aurora 16 somewhere as well, and I was looking at an Antelope Audio. Great, 32 in out, awesome. I kind of like the restriction of 8 in, 8 out in a way. It's like,
if you like restriction, you're going to love this.
Well, but
this podcast,
right? But and well, I mean, that's. I think I don't want to conflate this all with like, rather than it be my forever studio, it's my desert island studio or whatever. If all else fails, studio. But I just don't. I don't need 32 ins and outs on a sound card, and sound quality is obviously essential both on the DA and the AD stage. And I think just for playing back music, that thing. It's got a real magic, and Prism converters,
And you're saying it's 10 years old, the one you're still using?
It's ancient. And as I say, I got Lyra 4 in, 4 out, and this Prism Orpheus comes everywhere with me. I mean, I carried it in my girlfriend's straw holiday bag, and it's hit the deck. It's got the profile of an old VHS video player. I should really upgrade it, but I don't think they've done anything to it that warrants upgrading it. I think it's just USB-C now, and I use about 3 adapters on the FireWire cable, but it works fine. Yeah.
Will can see if you can upsell some dreams here. What have we got?
Oh, well, they did the Titan as well.
Yes, I think that's
Atlas
one.
As
yes, well. Yeah. That's where I should really be going.
So do you want to go up to a Titan or an Atlas?
Yes, let's do that. Absolutely, because
What's the order? Is Atlas better than Titan?
Atlas has 8 mic pre's.
Yes.
The Titan has 4 mic pre's.
Okay, let's go with the Atlas. I'll never be in a scenario where I'm going to need 8 mics.
For anybody Googling this stuff, it does look like kind of old VHS / hi-fi equipment as well, the design.
It's got a hi-fi vibe. Yeah.
That company's run by a bunch of scientists who they need, it sounds to me like it's just a bunch of scientists basically, which is great for nerds like me, but get someone in the design department or not. I like this then.
Yeah, I like it.
That's why I've still got that Orpheus. You know, everyone's it's fun at airports, put it that way. And everyone's got Peli cases, and I've got tens of thousands of dollars worth of kit, but I carry it around in a straw holiday bag. It's It's a bit like when Fergie used to show up, the DJ Fergie, not Fergie from Black Eyed Peas. He used to show up.
Oh, no, I was thinking
the Royal Fergie.
The Royal Fergie. So many Fergies.
Fergie, the hard house DJ, used to show up at gigs, festival gigs, like headline stages at Creamfields with all his records in a plastic Iceland bag. I don't know why he did it. It was just a talking point, and it's sort of
great,
quite amazing. And I think there's a guy, I forget who it was, some like Fat Tony, who seems to be DJing everywhere in London at the minute. He's started doing it as well. I don't know why they do it, but there's something quite ingenious and
that is quite cool.
It's just funny. It's a talking point.
Bag for life.
Yeah.
Nice. DAW then.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is another easy one. I mean, it's got to be Cubase, and it's just sound quality. I'm going to say sound quality is superior to most of what's out there. I love their plugins, everything that Steinberg make, their EQs and reverbs. I just love the flow, the layout. Cubase 13, the way it performs now is like, fuck. It's a tape machine for me.
It's kind of your forever DAW as well. Like, always used it? Cause
I've used it since the 90s on an Atari ST. Sorry, Steinberg, I had that crack. My lecturer gave me the crack with the bombs on it.
It's a good lecturer, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, I mean, I'm surprised because they were when I was, this is how long ago it was, they were transitioning to PC, but everybody was still using it on the Atari ST because the MIDI timing was so good. Anyway, no, it's got to be Cubase because it is just, it does everything. And we're getting to a point now where I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but they all kind of do the same thing. They've just found different ways to do it. And I mean, Ableton is equally as impressive with 12. I think Logic and Cubase are neck and neck at this point. They've borrowed so much from each other. Maybe the differentiator at this point is a sound library and the actual, I know the Logic sampler with its auto sampling is hugely helpful. It'd be nice to have that in.
Well, the competition of DAWs is what's pushed it on so much in the last 10 years because, you know, even the offshoots like Bitwig and Studio One and things that have come out of those sort of headline companies from other people and are now making everybody else try harder. It's great for consumers.
And you can't, it's like learning a language. I don't have the time to try and learn. I mean, I wish in some ways that I was really deeply embedded in Ableton because the way I make music really lends itself to Ableton. A lot of the time I get inspiration from cycling recordings and loops, and of course with the sample library I've got, which is weird, a guy with so many analog synths, but it usually, particularly when you're on the road, it starts with samples, and I think you can do it in other DAWs. It's just that idea, that sparking idea process thing of it, I think the next generation of DAWs it's going to all, in my opinion, be about simplifying the idea generation process, and if you can get what's in your brain into your speakers in as efficient a manner as possible without having to learn a new language.
So with what you just said, when you are recording, say in LA in your synth cave, are you running MIDI to them all and running things live like a tape machine, or are you looking to create loops and cutting, or a mixture of both?
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Cubase lets me do both. I mean, I tend to monitor. Well, in the studio, I've got 2 daisy-chained Lynx Aurora 16s. I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but I get 32 live monitored audio inputs. And the good thing about that room, I mean, it's taken me years to get the setup right, but I have a couple of MIDI patch bays and a Mayo MIDI interface, which is like, I think it's like 16 in, 16 out. It's pretty crazy. So everything's got MIDI.
So that's 16 by 16 as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah, you can have 16 channels on each. So it's everything's got MIDI. Everything that can get clock has clock. And the good thing about the Lynx Auroras is they never really screw up with drivers and stuff. You hit play and everything just comes to life, and you can monitor the studio. It's a really cool studio way because it's divided into all these sections, and I've been in studios with that much gear where nothing's really talking to one section, it's not really talking to another section. But with us, you just hit play, you bring your laptop in, you hit play, and it's very possible to have 3 sections of a band, all each man their own part of the studio. One person could be on the drum machines, which are all clocked, and be programming in step time. Somebody could be behind the synths playing in real time, and of course that's monitored and recorded through the 32 ins. And somebody else could be at the computer, putting in effects.
And do you have the synths like, these are the polys, these are the mono bass?
Yeah, it's quite logical, finally. Initially, I'd arranged them by aesthetic, even by manufacturer. How sad is that? But now it's all
autobiographical.
No, there is a method to it now. And the worst thing about collaborating on electronic music, and one of the reasons I've really tended to stay away from collaborations a lot, is by definition, somebody's always at the computer and the other person's just telling them what to do. It's crap. That form of collaboration is hopeless. So having it laid out so everyone can jam and make real music with real tactile, not real music's the wrong term, but tactile interfaces. And that's why I've got so much old shit in there, because it's the way in which the workflow.
It was Chromio that had 2 keyboard and 2 mouse.
2 mice, yeah.
But they wished that they could have 2 mouse pointers at the same time, and nothing allows you to do that.
Yeah,
but actually, chaotic. But
I think
got a good relationship.
There are a few apps and let you do that now. Actually, the guy I know is making something that enables real time collaboration with 2 folks at the same screen. That's actually it's a.
There's things that can do it remotely, like BandLab and stuff, but you can't on the actual OS. I don't know, maybe
on the same screen. Yeah. Item number 1.
So it's got to be a CS80. I don't own one, and it's in some ways obvious, but I want to justify it for anyone who doesn't know, or anyone who. I've got Deckard's Dream. We've all got the VSTs. They're all great. They all have their place in my heart, but you're never going to get the same thing twice with a CS80. No 2 will sound the same. I think that's what I'm trying to say here.
Right. Yeah.
And it's so versatile. You can do so much. You don't need to be a player to get something out of it. And I guarantee every time you turn it on, it's going to be part of a record. You could make an entire albums and albums on it.
So many records with it on that everybody knows.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, Toto.
Mm-hmm.
Blade Runner soundtrack. Yeah. Just about. It's bulky. It's expensive. They're crazy money now. I can't afford to buy one anytime soon. But
you need another Japanese commercial.
Huh?
You need another Japanese commercial. That's what you need. The CS80 one.
Yeah.
If you get one, we'll be like, start Googling. Something's kicking off in Japan. When was the first time you played one then at CS80?
It wasn't that long ago, actually. It was probably at Hal Ritzen's studio.
I've got CSA. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, no, I tell a lie. Maybe like 10 years ago, I had the opportunity. There was a guy who was related to Randy Castillo, who was Ozzy Osbourne's drummer, I think. That's how obscure this is. And he was selling one on Craigslist for $8,000. And at the time, this was 2000... I can't remember, at least 10 years ago. And I was like, yeah, I'm buying it. This is my...
That's not too bad.
I know. It was a really good price. And this thing was mint. And the guys, I went, they had some warehouse in North Hollywood, and I went and tried it out. And for some reason, they were really cagey. I don't know what the story was. It was an incredible... And they just let me sit in there for hours with it. And I think they were thinking that I was going to walk away and just buy it. And for whatever reason, I didn't. I don't know why. I regret it so much. And it was because they all sound different. This one was just tempered and serviced and just calibrated in a way where it just sounded beautiful. And you don't even really know what the faders are doing, because they're also reverse indented. And a lot of it is about the presets. You can't really manipulate the presets that much. But for whatever reason, the factory presets just sounded great in this one, and everything was in tune. And
big regret.
Oh, they sound amazing. I can't even put my finger on what it is, but it's just, they're alive.
I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I interviewed somebody once who got one the classic. It wasn't Craigslist, it wasn't Gumtree, but it was the equivalent of that in Europe. I don't know what it's called. And saw the listing as home organ for sale.
Wow.
Some like house clearance.
Whoa.
And got it for like, something like 1,000 or something, like a very low amount.
I remember there wasn't at a time when, because nobody wanted them because of the size. Yeah. And I came close to that. But yeah, home organ for sale. Wow. They're almost impossible to own, because where are you going to put it? It's so heavy.
Yeah.
How are you going to lug it around? Like, who's going to service it? There are fewer and fewer folks out there that can service these things in the way they do. But it's a forever studio.
Yeah, it's a forever studio. And if you have one, like in real life, it might be a reason that people book the studio, I guess. It's one of those items, isn't it?
It is. And Hal Ritson, I mean, I think he's actually selling his, but he had his set up really nicely. And I think his had MIDI. It was calibrated. He'd spent time and money.
Kent Spong on the...
I think that was it. Yeah, it was. And I heard somewhere he's retiring. So it's going to be harder, at least in the UK, to maintain them.
Really?
A few folks in the US that know what they're doing. A couple of ex-Yamaha engineers. But yeah, it's the sound of everything that, for me, soundtracks and Blade Runner,
of course,
2049 and the original, and it's
that's the thing. It sounds like it can be funky, it can be filmic and cinematic, and
dreamy. It can be harsh, aggressive. It can just be drones. And nowadays, when I play one, I just use it for drones, and just that ribbon controller, like the way you just ramp it up. And it's nice that you don't really know what the hell you're doing with it either. It's like I don't really care what the sliders do. It's just, just go and see where we end up, really,
Yeah, I guess it's a challenge if you want something specific, but it's really nice.
Yeah, I'm never going to be able to make a certain type of sound. How do I make that sound? How do I even go back to that sound? No idea. But every time I turn it on, something comes of it.
Locking it in. CSAE, Dream Synth.
Locked.
Item number 2.
I don't know. Yeah, and I hadn't even had a chance to think about this, which is good. And I'm gonna, just off the cuff, I'm gonna say an Eventide harmonizer H3000. It's quite a specific one, and like, who has a hardware reverb, which is basically what it is: glorified hardware reverb and pitch shifter in this day and age.
There's some upsell Dream opportunities here, right? Well,
yes, and there are ways, and I'm aware. I mean, Eventide make beautiful sounding. And Lexicon, and there are a few others. Bricasti, like, there are some hardware reverbs that are just otherworldly. There's some alchemy in there. But for me, the harmonizer, particularly the H3000, and that's just gone insane in the sort of reverb world. And these things sell at crazy prices now, like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 even. There's something about the conversion process, and there's something about the presets, and there's a few specific reverbs. It's just very easy on the ear. And with digital reverbs, with plug-in reverbs, a lot of the time, particularly with vocals and snare drums and things that are prevalent through a song, it sounds like every time you trigger them, you're getting this linear, uniform reverb, and it grates on your ear. And there's high-end frequencies in there that are like, just make things sound a bit tinny. The harmonizer, the H3000 specifically, is the only one that doesn't really have that. I mean, what I tend to do is I put it on snares a lot of the time, and I'll record sort of, even if it's something that's coming out of my DAW, pass it through it back into the DAW, back into my project, and I'll record about 8 to 16 hits of it. And it's just, every time it triggers, every time it's on the snare, it's doing something different. And so burning it in and bringing it back out and getting the grittiness of those converters, there's a few presets in there that have this, and Valhalla did this quite successfully with their reverbs. There's a kind of a shifting pitch element to it, to the reverb return, where it's almost like it's a couple of octaves. The reverb is a couple of octaves above the original signal that goes into it, and that pitch tends to fluctuate. And it's a beautiful, dreamy sound, and I've never heard it. And no one's come close to it with software.
Upsell? Isn't there a 5,000?
There's a 9,000.
There is, yes.
Would you want to go
upsell your dream
to a 9,000, H9000?
I've never heard it, but I mean, I did use a studio, I think, which had an 8,000, if that even exists. Hopefully none of the fellow nerds will shoot me down for this one. I think there is an 8,000. They do sound incredible. They do sound great. And I don't think I would, because I'm going to be controversial here. I think they would probably sound just as good as any plugin right now, because what are you really getting? I mean, you're getting the benefit of...
So was the 3000 the first of that range?
There was a 949, I believe, which was
It's like the classic one.
the classic, which didn't really... I think it was like Van Halen used to use it on his guitar. It was because it was a guitar effects processor.
So was that mono then? I mean, because the 3000 is stereo, is it?
The 3000 is stereo, yeah. There's not much flexibility in terms of like even the 4000, which I've got two 3000s and two 4000s. That's how much I like these things. So I've got 4000 and 4500.
500 better.
500 better.
They're all just different. Yeah, but I mean, they're like it's just. I think it's just a. They tend to do it based on the year it was. You know, the more obviously the higher the number, the more modern it is. But is it? I don't really. They're all just different, and I think a lot of it is the presets. And with the 4000 and the 4500, and then the modern ones are quite hard to program. I mean, you obviously have to dive into the software and you sort of do it that way. But if I'm going to do that, I'm going to get a plugin to do that for me.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I can't be upsold on my ancient 16-bit converter.
Lock it in, Will.
Yeah.
It's 3000. Yeah, it's that thing is staying with me forever. Yeah.
Let's race forward to item number 3 then. Think about what you've got.
Yeah. Okay, I don't currently have a Moog Model D, and I don't know why it's such a glaring omission, but it's the best filter in any synth in the world ever, in my opinion. And it's so limiting, but it's so warm and crisp and beautiful, and some people describe it as buttery. And it looks amazing. It looks it's a beautiful piece of furniture. I don't care if it's the original, if it's the remake. Obviously, good to have MIDI. So let's go with the remake. Let's not go with the original. But it's beautiful. It's just, it does one thing for me, basses and droney type bass lines.
Surprising you don't have it.
I know. I don't know why I never go, because I used to think to myself, well, it only does one thing. Why would I spend sort of, several thousands? Because it's one of those things, if you didn't buy the original back in the days,
I suppose it's always been expensive as well.
It's really expensive for what it does. That's why I don't own it, because I'm not going to, $5-6 grand.
And it never went out of like favour like a 303 or a lot of other synths, like even the Jupiters and Junos kind of got quite low in price at one point, where they've always been.
It's a dependable. It's a bit like having a Volvo 240. It's the Volvo of synthesizers. It's like just dependable. You know what you're going to get. It's not going to mess you around. It gets you from A to B. God, this is... I'm not sure where I'm going with this. But it's just so dependable. It is. It's the Volvo of synths. And it's and that doesn't mean that it's not interesting. Anyone who just can play one note can get something cool out of that. You don't need to be a player. And
Again, that's another Craigslist story, isn't it? The people have picked them up cheap from people thinking it doesn't work. Only plays one note at a time on the advert.
I've never actually heard that. But that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like, might need repairing. Will only play one note at a time.
Amazing. Or the release just goes on forever. It's just a drone. Yeah. That's amazing. I've never actually heard that. But they for electronic music, for disco, for obviously what I do, cinematic soundtracks, there's a way in which it sits in a mix, and you really have to hear it. And this is somewhere like, hopefully, and I'm sure it'll happen at some point, we'll get there with digital, with soft synth technology. But the reason I'm still in that vintage, and of course there's the remake, and to my ears the reissue doesn't sound any different to the originals. I've played they all of them sound slightly different. But yeah, it's a beautiful, it's an instrument. I don't see it as a synthesizer. I don't see it as it's an instrument in the way I would look at a bass guitar.
Want to steal one off any famous player?
Well, there's a few I don't know them well enough to know that there's one specific year or one specific era that sounds a different way. I just know they all sound alike.
Could just be as a punishment.
Or someone you particularly like. Doesn't have to be a punishment.
Well, I'll take Chromeos, because I know that P-Thug from Chromeo, he uses a lot for leads and the way he plays it. I'll take P-Thugs. If he's ever looking to get rid of it, I'll take P-Thug's Model D.
An in-series steal.
Unbelievable.
That's new.
I'll swap him. I'll trade him for something.
Another Lindrum.
If it's an LM1, I'm not sure that's a fair trade. But actually, we've segued because
moving on.
Actually, I'm not going to say an LM1, because that's like No, it's not going to be an LM1. It's going to be not everything's got to be super vintage, does it? And can it be software? Can we have software?
You can have whatever
software.
you want.
Okay.
We will tell you if it's not allowed. We have it now
Ever studio
at the ready.
Software.
Think about what you have so far.
Yeah.
3 items left.
It's going to be hardware, and it's going to be an SSL G series bus compressor.
Oh,
and I did used to have one, and I sold it.
Can we not upsell you to the whole desk?
You could. Yeah. Anything, really, at this point, anything SSL, you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Full G series. What size? How big do you need it to be?
I want it all. Fuck it. I want it all. I want the electricity bill that goes with it. I want the maintenance. I want it all. Yeah, who doesn't want it all?
The horseshoe-shaped, real-world style one, 128
I want my
faders.
feet up on it, Trevor Horn style with my tennis shorts on. Yeah, no, I want it all. It's my forever studio. I want it all, man.
Yeah.
I want the entire thing. Like, I mean, in 50 years time, in 20 years time, how many folks are actually going to have these? How many are going to be manufactured? How many are going to be maintained? So I want it all, and I want it now. And
as Queen said,
forever studio. But why would you just be? Yeah, I mean, come on. Why would you just be satisfied with a measly G series bus compressor? I want it all. Yeah.
That's
I don't know what
spirit.
I'm going to do.
That is the spirit.
That's what
of
this is all about.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's the money desk. It's the like, fuck you, I'm here. It's the yeah.
So first experience of a G series desk or a G series compressor was, I mean, the software ones became extremely popular at one point to some of the legal battles of SSL, I think, as well at the time.
Yeah, right.
Well, my first experience is a recent one too. I mean, it's only been really in the last 10 years, and that's the Red Room in Moloko. They've got it's a real joy to mix there.
Wait, is that the one I was talking about? Does that have a red?
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, it's all been done.
Sorry, on another episode, listeners, you might have heard me go on about some red desk. I thought it was at Battery and Assault. But it's
Moloko Red Room. Yeah, I'm very happy.
Which actually makes more sense.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's called the Red Room.
I think they've
I should have
changed
remembered
it.
that.
They might even have changed the appearance. They may not even call it the Red Room anymore.
Do.
No, they do. Okay,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
Amazing sound.
They used to have red NS10s though, which made it
That's
cooler.
right. They did, didn't they?
Yeah.
They still.
No, not according to these pictures that we're looking at.
I'm gonna vouch for that room massively because it's probably the best room I've ever mixed in, and it's not unreasonable to get in there for a day. You're vying with many major label artists who are more talented, more successful, and much richer than I am to block book it for a month. But if you can get in there for a couple of days, it's a fantastic room. And that SSL, I just would basically print all my stems through it. That's how I did the first Prince of Pleasure record. Just went and just, right, we're going to stem it all out. And they have a Lavery and a bunch of other really beautiful converters. So taking everything out of the door, putting it into that analog domain and whacking it through the SSL back in. I mean, wow. Yeah, it's again, it's one of those things that just makes everything sound alive. You can take the most uninspiring piece of audio and just have it go through there and give it that. There's no way to really
sounds like
say
a record.
what it is. It sounds like a record. And that's why the compressor came into it, because the compressor specifically makes it sound like a record, and you can't really fuck it up. I mean, as long as it's going through that thing, as long as the needle's sort of just kind of moving a little bit, the gain reduction is just bubbling a little bit. I mean, that's how people tend to set them up. 2-1 ratio and a little flutter of the needle. But they sound incredible. It's subtle. It's the glue that keeps everything together, and plugins don't really do it the same.
So let's lock that one in.
90. How did you manage to upsell me to 96 channel SSL?
Sorry, I'm just 112 channels.
Apparently, that's the biggest one in existence.
I want it all. Can I have a custom one with
You can have a custom one, yeah.
240 channels? Yeah. No, 112. Yeah, because,
all the way, a complete circle. So you have to go under the desk to get into it.
There was a keyboard many years ago that was a controller that was like a circular keyboard.
Yes, yeah.
And actually, that could be on the list too. But no, my SSL would have
that
to be
within
configured.
it.
Oh,
yeah, so
nice.
so you're basically sat in a circle of a prison of your own making. Yeah, no, give me the SSL. Give me all 96 channels and give it to me in a circular format so nobody can disrupt me. I have to jump into it.
Okay, we've got 2 more items left. So I'd like to point out at this point you don't have any way to hear anything.
That is a very good point. And yes, for some reason I assume my monitors were
everybody assumes.
Yeah. No, I assume my monitors were accounted for.
I'm being very kind, not letting you get to the end before going.
No, monitors is a great. It is a great, and it opens up such a can of worms for me because we have so many ways we can go, and one of the problems with always being in big cities, as I have for most of my career, is you can't really get to make a lot of noise. The bane of my life is our noise complaints and other people's noise.
We won't have that in Northern Ireland though.
Going to our Forever studio, I mean, being in Portrush or wherever it is, Port Stewart, who's going to disturb me there? So by virtue, it's got to be a big, intimidating, fuck off, woofer, vomit-inducing behemoth of a sound system.
Soffit mounted, absolutely. And I'm going to go with the Augsburgers.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
because again, the Red Room has them.
I've never heard of these.
They are massive monitors.
They're insane, and
they sound great.
They have a booth at NAMM each year. They're one of those sort of old school companies. I love Dave Malakanpur. I hope I've said that right. Who owns a company? He's a great guy. I've done some demos for him in the past. He is just a traveling salesman in the best possible sense, and he just travels the world selling these speakers to large studios.
Like Snoop Dogg's got a set
in his
studio. Yeah.
I mean, all his clientele are just heavyweight US rappers, essentially. The vast majority of his clientele. You can understand why they love him. They're impossible to burn out the tweeters or woofer. You would have to be I don't know what you'd have to be doing to burn these things out because they are so loud and so insanely bassy. And definition-wise, I'm sure you'd need to sort of go somewhere else to just really get that definition. But if you want to know if you're making club records or if you want to know what your record's going to sound like in a theater, that's where you want to be. And they're insane. They make you could just, sometimes I used to go to the Red Room and I'd say for the first couple of days of the session, I'd just listen to music on Augsburgers through an SSL.
So they have them in the Red Room too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's two parts. I think there's so many different configurations. There's the small ones, which, they're great. They're just, and I say the small ones, it's such a generic way to refer to them. I think it's just a 12-inch woofer and like a horn tweeter. It's kind of like a PA almost.
And are they ribbon or normal?
I actually don't know.
I think he just builds all these customized. I think a lot of it's custom because I don't know the prices even of these things. They just...
It's contact for pricing.
I've assumed it would be because it is. I think
if you have to ask, you can't afford them.
Basically.
On this show,
that's how it is.
I
don't know if we've ever had a My Forever Studio Choice that's unpriced though.
Unpriced. Well, it's because we're going to see. I mean, I'm finally starting to understand what I can get away with here, and if we're going to have the 96 channel SSL, it's going to be unaffordable shit from here on.
And we do have a price here. So the smaller system, the one you're talking about, where it's there's a two subs, and then there are two on top. That's £17,994.
So
that's the medium-sized system. There's a bigger one. There's a tower system up from there.
But if we got custom soffit mounted situation, we're going to be in the hundreds of thousands.
I want to get their engineers to build that fucking thing for me.
Okay.
And
any custom finishes?
Because they come in all sorts of colours. They have orange ones. They often show at the NAMM show, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. They've got silver ones as well. I think David Guetta might have the silver ones.
Of course he does.
Is it David Guetta? Some EDM guys got the silver ones. No, it's
maybe Nicky Romero. I can imagine him with a silver set of speakers.
But I mean, no, they're incredible. I mean, go check if you ever get the opportunity. I mean, I don't know how they get away with it now. I don't know how anyone gets away with demoing anything because it's a horrible way to demo your product. But the reason I don't know how they don't get shut down because you can't run these things quietly. The minute you put anything through them, it's just like, I think the configuration in Red Room might even have an 18-inch woofer.
Yeah.
So it's like, fucking hell. I mean, give me the custom 18-inch woofers. I want them made fast.
And silver. Do you want silver?
No. It's black. Yeah, because
black,
silver would, I don't know.
No,
it's black. Or black everything, yeah.
Okay, cool. Locked in. Final item.
Locked in. Final item. We're there already. I thought two more left.
No.
I'm resisting the urge to go vintage, but it's a dream studio because anything
don't fight your dreams.
That's sort of I've got to chase my dreams, and I don't own one, and it's got to be a PPG Wave. They can't be replicated. And it's one of the. I think a lot of this is the theme with me. You can't replicate it. Software can't do it. It's of an era.
They must be almost as rare as the CS80s, right?
They are, yeah. There's probably more of them made than a CS80, probably. There's a good remake. There's a company. Is it even a remake or is it a reissue at this point? Third Wave, they're called. Those things sound insane.
Weren't they more of a nightmare to keep going than say a CS80?
I think they're quite buggy.
Because they're
a very early foray
based, right? Yeah, so like I think maybe that's why there's not as many around.
Do you want the Wave 2, or is it the
original?
Good question.
It's from 85. That goes for about 20 grand.
I think it's going to have to be one of the more recent ones. I say more recent, but not the first iteration. Like, if is there a Rev 3? Is there a 3.2 or something? Or am I imagining that? But
that could be the software.
That's
there's a 2.2
PPG Wave 3.
It's going to be a 3 because from my understanding, obviously it's the software thing, isn't it? And you want the software as up to date as possible. And imagine not who's going to upgrade the software for you. So you want something that's got the most.
It's Waldorf actually. No, this is
the 3 is the software. The 2 is the final hardware, I think.
Okay.
Oh, you might be right there. Yeah.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, 2.
That's just gut instincts.
No, you're right. It's the 3.V is a reincarnation of the PPG Wave. So, but you want a real hardware one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So 2. 985 2 is the most recent
wow.
one.
Yeah. I mean, what can't you do with that? I mean, it's and it's alive.
What can you do with it?
Yeah, tell us about the sound for people that have never heard it.
Well, it's got this metallic sort of. the only way I can really describe it is metallic, and it's a bit cold. It's not
glassy as well.
It's a bit glassy. Thank you, glassy, metallic, a bit sort of eerie. I think pads, brassy sort of bass. I use
kind of bells and that kind
bells, spectral sort of like ambience. Stuff, it's just very pleasing to listen to, and I've got this thing where like I don't really make my music that complex. So if I'm repeating something over and over again, a motif, a sequence, and it's just it's not really even evolving a lot of the time. That's what a lot of electronic music is. It's got to come from something that sounds beautiful enough where you can sort of keep having this thing going and going and going without sort of fatiguing your senses.
Well, it'll naturally evolve because it's
it's also slightly going out of tune, and there's the
the H3000 for the same reason. All of that
precisely. That's my recurring theme here, and I think the PPG Wave is a very good example of that. And again, rare. Has it ever really been bettered or replicated? Not really, and that's why it's in there. Yeah,
love it. Yeah.
So, before we get onto the luxury item, Will is going to describe the Fantasy Forever studio that you've just recorded.
Yeah.
Have a listen, see what you think of this studio.
We're stealing Devon analog and dropping it in Portrush in Northern Ireland by the sea for the tranquility of nature, the clean air, and you've got plenty of natural light in the studio.
Love it.
Your free items, you've chosen an M3 MacBook Pro, Prism Sound Atlas for your interface, and your DAW is Cubase Pro 13. Then for your 6 items, your first item is the Yamaha CS80. Your second item is the Eventide Harmonizer H3000. Your first synth is the Minimoog Model D reissue, which you call the Volvo of synths, and you're specifically taking P-Thugs from Chromeo.
Love it.
Then you've been upsold to a 112-channel SSL G-Series console in a circular format. Then for monitors, you've chosen the biggest Augsburgers in black. The biggest ones I can find are the Augsburger Quattro 415s, originally custom designed for Snoop Dogg's studio.
Fantastic.
And then your final item, another synth, is the PPG Wave 2.
I mean,
sound good?
It doesn't get much better than that, really. I mean, it's
well, it can get better by one item.
Yes, and I know exactly.
And that's our luxury item.
Yeah, and
this is where dreams can be upsold quite heavily.
So my luxury item is going to be a dude. Dude.
Hang on a second. Okay, so we've got a no slavery rule. We've had to institute it recently because a lot of people just want somebody else
I just want someone that can do everything. Repair synthesizers, make amazing food, deal with anyone I don't want in a studio, like a bouncer. You know, it's got to be someone physically intimidating. Am I allowed to continue with this? Is this considered slavery? Or he's on the payroll, by the way.
You can pay them, yeah.
Yes.
We've had robots.
Yeah.
He's got to be human.
Got to be human.
Yeah. So it's just, and it's, by dude, I don't mean he doesn't have to be a man. He could be anyone. You know, he can be anything he wants. The gender is completely unimportant. As long as this individual
does anything you say.
No, and this individual is on payroll, so I am not exploiting. They're going to get paid very handsomely, and they'll want to be there. They will want to cook for me.
Yeah.
They will want to service my CS80. They will want to source obscure EPROMs. They will want to beat people up that try to get into my studio and get me to respond to emails.
Like a great job.
And
so
it has a bit of violence, a bit of cooking.
Yeah. No, I want them to be...
A bit of synth nerding.
They will also be able to sit and listen to me make records in an archaic, old-fashioned way without being like, mate, what are you doing with that snare? Like, why? No, that doesn't work. No, but they need to be there for me, you know, because no one else is going to be here in Portrush with me. You've got to understand. I
think what's really bubbling to the surface here is the talk of a man who's been living in the studio on his own.
This is, I mean, you can see where this is going. You can see where this is going. And it's got, and I don't know who this person is, but there's going to be a lengthy interviewing process for, you know, it's when you hear about these sort of these remote islands and they interview for like a postmaster or a GP and they're willing to pay them like tens of thousands of pounds. Like
that happens in Ireland and Scotland a lot, doesn't it?
I don't know if it happens in Ireland actually, but I know it happens in Scotland.
Some of the little islands, I've seen one.
Rathlin Island, which is this obscure island off the north of Northern Ireland, which no one lives on. That I know they're looking for people there, but I guess I'm going to be looking for somebody like that because I'm not going to be in Portrush all year round.
It's a lifetime contract as well.
Yeah, it's going to be well paid.
Yeah.
And I don't want this person to be violent. No, I just want them to just do things for the love.
I'm out.
Like, and they've got to enjoy maintenance. And
what's their signature dish?
This is a great point. Yeah, what is their signature dish?
Something that you
a decent cup of tea. I know. I mean, that's like when you're in America, when you spend so much time in America, it's impossible to get a decent cup of tea. It's impossible. It's the milk. Even if you bring your own tea bags, which I always do. A cup of whatever, you know, I like Twinings, I like Yorkshire Gold. It doesn't taste the same. It's the water, it's the milk. It's, I don't know, it's all combination of things. You can get a good cup of tea in the US. Anywhere really outside, in my humble opinion, out of the UK, you can get proper tea. So they've got to be able to make a decent cup of tea, and they've got to know how I like it, exactly how long tea bag's in there, and you know what milk I like in there, and the type of milk's quite specific too. Like, or you know, Tesco's
milk first.
No, only fucking psychos do that. No. So tea bag first. You got yeah. I mean,
that'll be the first test of the interview.
Yeah, no.
Maybe a cup of tea. Get out.
No. I mean, if they God forbid they try Oatly or like you know, it's got to be like proper tea with proper milk.
So is that really the fuel of your sessions then? A proper cup of tea?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If I'm listening to anything, it starts with a good cup of tea. And it's. I mean, in America, I can't get that, and I mean, you can't have like 5 coffees in a day. So, decent cup of tea. Yeah.
Okay, I think that was fairly explained. The human.
But I had to start it with like it needs to be a dude, and I hope a dude doesn't imply that it's going to just be a man. I think you could anyone could.
You want a human.
Yeah.
So it's somebody who will cook for you, engineer sometimes.
Yes.
Do maintenance. We do have a Forever Studio maintenance technician. We can get to you at any moment.
Okay. Well,
notice.
Yeah. Let's chef and
security
and you know, spiritual guidance. Maybe they might even know a weed dealer, or they might know where the best fish and chips are. They need some regional knowledge too. Tour guide? No.
Like a hookup. Yeah. What's it called when you
someone who can just facilitate.
A
fixer. Thank you.
A fixer.
Yeah.
Concierge / fixer / chef.
Yeah.
I feel like you're getting a lot out of this person. It's a very particular set of skills.
But it's a luxury. I mean, and can a person be an item? I mean, can a luxury item be a person?
This is kind of the kind of the issue.
I'm not sure if I'm itemizing this person, but in the absence of a person, and you know, I'm not objectifying my employee.
What's in your studio in LA that you took over there that isn't a piece of gear?
Tea.
It's tea.
It's tea. I always bring my own tea, and I can never get it right. it's the water is different there, and like
there are British shops in LA.
Yeah, it's
aren't
not the
they?
same. It's
No?
been if you get tea bags there, they've been sat. They could have been sat on the shelf for a couple of years.
That's true.
There's
Actually,
a British supermarket in Santa Monica everybody goes to.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Yeah, tea. Honestly, that's my luxury item. Tea, plenty of it. Yeah.
Any particular kind is your go-to?
Twinings. Twinings Earl Grey. Yeah. Twinings
Breakfast. Twinings breakfast.
I like everyday. I like the everyday breakfast blend. I like more, but Twinings Earl Grey has a specificness to it.
likes the bergamot.
I hope it's ethically
Citrus
sourced. I don't know how ethical a company Twinings are. I'm not going to shout them out.
I mean,
here
all
without-
tea companies, I think,
I
are a
mean,
bit.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, yeah, but Twinings, yeah, no, yeah. I don't want a person as my item. I want tea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There, we're locking it in. Okay, so Fantasy Forever Studio built. Thank you so much, Sharooz, for coming
Thank you
in
for having me.
and taking part today. I think that's pretty good studio.
Really solid. Yeah, great choice.
And new speakers that I've never heard of before. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was a fantastic set of choices from Sharooz there. Yeah.
It was indeed. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time for another adventure into Studio Foreverdom. Bye-bye.
Bye.